Hello and welcome to this training on mindset and behaviour. What I want to do here is to share some tips from Cognitive Behavioural Therapy where we can better understand what actually underlines and motivates our behaviour. I often find with clients who are trying to take up new habits, take up new goals, change how they behave in the workplace, that they find it very, very difficult to sustain new behaviours. And often our focus area is on how we behave on the behaviour side, but we don't spend enough time thinking about the cognitive, to think about the mindset and understanding what's going on internally that is causing us to behave in such a way. So if I could explain cognitive behavioural therapy in a really, really simple way, it would be that you've got thoughts, you've got emotions, and you've got actions. And whether you realize it or not, your thoughts that occur to you in your head, they trigger an emotional reaction. And those emotional reactions trigger an action, how you respond, how you behave, what do you say, the tone that you say it. And often those actions either reaffirm your thoughts, and then you come back into the cycle again. And so I often give the example of somebody who is conflict averse. And we can use any sort of example here of goals that you're setting up. So the action that you're striving towards might be saying no to people. It might be diet, it might be exercise, it might be people pleasing, it might be procrastination, performance, whatever it might be. But often we focus in this area here around your actions. We get so, I can't even think of the word, tunnel vision on just focusing on our behaviours and just willing ourselves to be different. And what I find time and time again with clients is that becomes frustrating. It becomes really tiring. It becomes really difficult to sustain ourselves. And so what I try to do with my clients is to take a step back and to say, okay, let's take a step back from the actions and think about your thoughts for a moment. What is going on in your head before you respond? And a word of caution, concern to the wise here is this cycle of thoughts, emotions, actions, they're something that we learn throughout our life cycle. So this is something that has been going on as a child, as a teenager, in education, in your first job, in your second job. This is something that happens throughout our life cycle and consistently gets reaffirmed. And the more it gets reaffirmed, the harder it is to recognize and the more unconscious it becomes. And so what the exercises around cognitive behavioural therapy are all about becoming a little bit more conscious about what's going on in our head, and so that rather than reacting to a situation, you have the headspace to respond, to have a thoughtful, conscious response to a situation. I liken this often to Einstein's definition of insanity. I mentioned we focus consistently on the actions, and we never take a step back to think, okay, but why am I acting that way? What's actually governing that behaviour? What's motivating me to say yes, to say no, to behave in a certain way? And so often what I find is that with clients, they spend years trying to change the actions and they don't spend enough time on the cognitive side of things. And then when you do that, you kind of break that cycle of insanity and you can start to get different results. I also liken this to Freud's concept of repetitive compulsion. And there what Freud was saying is that as humans, what we crave is familiarity, we crave pattern, we crave knowing and expectation of what comes next. And so often what we do is we repeat the same patterns irrespective of whether they're healthy, unhealthy, positive or negative, and that fundamentally on a subconscious or unconscious level, what we strive for is to be in a pattern that is familiar to us. You see this the whole time with friends of yours that might have the same toxic partners, despite the fact they always say they'll go for a different profile of person, or people who always end up in the same jobs that they really, really hate, the same type of boss. They're in this repetitive compulsion, and it can happen quite unknowingly and unconscious to us. So what you want to do in this cycle of thoughts, emotions, and actions is to begin at the thoughts. So let's take the example of the people pleaser, the person who doesn't like conflict, who's always going to say yes, yes, yes. You can look at the situation and say the action is yes, I'll take on that project. I'll take on added responsibility. But take a step back and think about, well, what is your initial thought there? And so thoughts here tend to be things around, I'm not good enough. She'll think I'm unprofessional if I say no. He'll think I'm lazy. I won't get promoted. I won't be taken seriously. I'm not enough. I'm a failure. I'm an imposter. And so those are all thoughts that come into your head. often these thoughts can come in unconsciously. These can be things that are happening without you even realizing it. And so in a moment, I'll come back to how to become a bit more conscious about these thoughts. Unsurprisingly, if you have these thoughts, you have an emotional reaction. That can be sad, it can be stress, it can be anxiety, it can be vulnerability, it can be a sense of weakness, a lack of confidence, a whole range of emotions can come through here. And those emotions are going to dictate how you behave, what you say, and how you act. And so what you want to do is by starting at the thought process, become more conscious there, and you really want to kind of cut out this actions to thoughts. So when something happens to you, rather than automatically going to those thoughts of, oh, I'm not good enough, I'm a failure, to be able to question those. And it's easier to reframe your thoughts than it is to reframe your emotions, your actions, because often it's like the horse is bolted. By the time you want to change your emotions, you're in the sadness, you're in the anger, you're in the stress. It's very difficult to come out of that quickly. And it's very difficult then to change your actions because emotions can just run away from you. But you can reframe your thoughts and you can change your thinking and your thought process. And a great way of doing this is using the ABC model. This comes from a guy called Dr. Harry Barry. And it's an exercise that you can do. His suggestion, and I've done this myself, and I do it with clients in my one-to-one coaching and in my group coaching. And what we do is, over the course of 4 to 6 weeks, and you don't do this every day, you only do it when something comes up, you outline an activating an event. So that could be, in this case, if you're in the office and your boss says, you take on this project, you take out your phone, quickly into the notes app, write down, boss asked me to do X, felt bad, I felt XYZ, whatever it was, quickly into your phone, and then come back to it later that evening. What I want you to do in the evening is take out a journal. And then write down, again, take out your phone, look at, okay, what was that activating event? What was that trigger that I had? That's your starting point. Then look at, okay, in that moment, what belief or demand did I put on myself? What belief did you have? So it could be, I'm not good enough, I'm a failure, I'm a terrible employee, I'm not being taken seriously, I'm not liked, I'm not professional, whatever the beliefs are, and there could be many. You might want to link that to a demand. So there could be a demand of how you should behave, what you must do. You can write them out on paper. And then I want you to look at the consequences. And usually what I find is consequences are threefold. You've got the emotional consequences, how you felt. You felt sad, you felt stressed, you felt upset, you felt angry. You've got the physical consequences. So that could be, I had difficulty breathing, I was crying, I was so angry I couldn't even think, I've lost focus, I was fatigued. Those are some physical consequences. And then finally, you've got the real world impact consequences. And so that can be as a result of saying yes to your boss, you spent less time with your friends, you spent less time with your family, you couldn't go for that walk, you couldn't do the exercise, you stayed in late, so you got a takeaway, and you begin to see there's a snowball effect, that you begin to feel worse because you're not doing things that you need to do to be happy. You're not spending time with your loved ones, you're not looking after yourself. Those are some consequences. And typically what I find with clients, and we see this a little bit in the previous little cycle I had, clients want to avoid the activating event and triggers. They never want to see them, but newsflash, you can't. Activating events, triggers are going to be all around you. I can't coach you to never be in that situation, but what I can do is coach you to have the tools that you can respond in a conscious way rather than just an instant gut reaction. And people tend to change the consequences. They try to be like, well, I won't get stuck with my breathing, and I won't get upset or angry, and I won't skip out on a lunch date with my friends or coffee with my friends or skip the exercise because of work. But often that's really difficult, and in time you slip into those old patterns. Why? Because you have ignored the underlying belief or demand that motivates and effectively governs your behaviour. And so what you want to do here is really focus on that belief or demand and really ask yourself, is it rational or is it irrational? Spoiler, 90 to 95% of the people I work with, including when I've done this, they're irrational beliefs. You really question yourself. So if you're seeing things like, I'm unprofessional, I don't have enough experience, I'm going to get fired, really ask yourself, how many years of experience do you have? You've got X amount of years of experience. Have you ever been fired? No. Are you qualified? Yes. Is your boss like you? Yes. Is somebody actually going to fire you for saying no on one occasion? Really go in and question yourself. And so what I often suggest is to do this for somewhere between 4 to 6 weeks. And in that time, and again, this isn't something you're going to do every day. It's something you're going to do as it comes up. And you can use this for a whole range of situations that you find yourself in. But you'll find that in time, the same beliefs come up. And when you really question them, you get more confidence. You become more grounded in yourself. You can really say, these thoughts are not me. They're totally irrational. They're a fleeting thought, and they come in and they go out. And that's the end of it. I would also suggest that if you do this exercise, you're doing it in a journal on paper. Why? The emotional part of your brain is the thing that is spinning these thoughts around all day long. What happens when you're in a coaching session with somebody like me and you're talking to somebody who's questioning you, that activates the rational part of your brain. The rational part of your brain has to say, hold on a minute. Am I unprofessional? Am I actually going to get fired? Or if you're doing this on paper, when you read it out to yourself, it activates the rational part of your brain. And it can say to yourself, okay, actually, do you know what? Now that I'm seeing this on paper and it's out of my head, this is really, really silly. This is really, really stupid. And so when you come back to the system, what my clients often find is that by doing this for 4 to 6 weeks, when those thoughts come in, they can quench them out, they can chip away at them, and they have a different emotional reaction. And when they have a different emotional reaction, they behave and they respond differently. And so simply by doing this exercise, if you want to, use the blue fella instead of the red, you have positive thoughts come into your head. The positive thoughts lead to emotions around feeling confident, feeling secure, feeling safe, feeling excited, feeling like you own what you're doing and you're fully competent. And then as a response to that, you will behave differently. You'll act in a way perhaps that is more in accordance with how you want to be. These are just some tips and tricks that I often share with my clients. And if you're interested in more, feel free to get in touch with me. I also work with people in one-to-one coaching for career development, one-to-one coaching for people who want to totally change careers. I now do organizational coaching, so I go into your workplace and I can coach you towards performance. If you're looking towards getting a promotion, or if you've just got a promotion and you require some coaching to upskill in certain areas. And I also do group coaching programs, so check out my website for details on all of those things.